Well, hey, everybody. What's going on? Hey, Shamita.
Hello.
Hi,
You'll have
how are you?
good. You'll have to let me know if my audio goes all wonky because my Wi-Fi is being testy.
No, I'm gonna ignore it. And then I'm gonna pretend like hey, Paula, thanks for becoming a member, babe. And then later on, I'm gonna be like, Shmita, I just listened to the replay, which I never do, and your audio ruined the whole stream. I'm gonna edit you out. Just kidding. Can you imagine if I was like that though? I would never do
Yeah,
that.
I don't listen back.
Neither do I. I don't want to hear myself twice. Sometimes
No.
I will if but
I went back and I listened to you saying that
don't.
recliner
Oh God, that the recliner fell. Oh God.
on top of me. Oh, it
Well, let me
gets me
say,
every time. I don't know why I find it so funny.
because it's ridiculous and absurd, and I said it with such authority, such an authoritative voice. With the recliner fell. Hey, Gwenty. Hey, Paula. Hey, Heather. Whatever. Molson man. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Hey, Cement Shoes. Lupe. Tony. Hello. Did I miss anybody? Allie 79. I don't think I missed anybody. I hope I didn't. Momo, BR the star. Oh, cement shoes. So, okay. And the other case we were doing, I was talking about Amy Mullis reaching for the pet carrier. And as I was thinking the thought and the words were coming out of my mouth, I was out of the corner of my eye watching, no worries, Molson man, we'll be here for
You,
you. I was out of the
you can't
corner.
watch chat and
Clearly, I
can't
mean, I
stop.
can, I just shouldn't. Okay, so I saw the corner of my eye recliner detective, and so instead of saying pet carrier, I said that the recliner fall down on her. That's what I said. And Shamita, look at her. She can't even handle it. She's can't even make it. Bless her heart.
Too
All
funny.
right. So tonight we are going to do the Ezra McCandless um, case, and we're going to start with the opening statements. Now, this case, I know a little tiny bit about it, but I didn't do a whole lot of research because obviously I like to hear it with you guys for the first time. But Dr. B is the one that recommended we do this case. So she will be joining us a little bit later on panel whenever she gets the opportunity. So let me. I actually kind of missed everybody yesterday. Normally, I always think that I'm live too much and that I'm annoying. Um, but I I was like last night. I was like, well, maybe we should take a day off. And so we did, but then I was like, well, now I kind of, oh crap, hold on. Stop it. I kind of missed everybody, and I was wondering if you guys missed me.
I did.
Sh- you did, Shmata. I did it. Think you would miss me? Yeah. I don't know. I felt like we might need a break. Everybody was, we've been going live almost every night since last week, and I don't know how you guys feel about that. So, I was like, well, maybe I should, well, maybe I just need to stop thinking that you guys need a break from me. But I had every intention today of like working on the next episode of Destroyed by Love. And then I was like, well, wait, let me fix this opening for tonight. And then I was like, okay, I fixed the opening for tonight. And then I was like, oh, well, I don't really like how the opener was for Destroyed by Love, right? So this will just take 15 minutes max. I'm just going to move some stuff around. Man, y'all, I ended up redoing the whole thing. So if y'all want to see it, I'll show it to you while we wait for Dr. B to get here. Hey, Mo, I didn't know you were off today, babe. Otherwise, I would have sent the link in chat.
I left early.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So if y'all want to see that, I reworked it. I like this one better. It's kind of the same, but different.
Yeah, I want to see it.
I want to see.
All right, hold on. Mo, of course I wanted you on, babe. I just didn't know you were off. All right, hold on. Let me. I just did it. All right. Okay, here we go.
That's
All
really
right, so
good.
there you are. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I clearly reworked it. I mean, most of the elements that were in it before are still the same, but I just wasn't happy with it. I just didn't. I don't know. So, needless to say, now I'm gonna have to uh, work extra hard, but to get this other episode out on time, because normally I would be working on it today and then finishing it up and then presenting it tomorrow. But since Dr. B wants to do this case and I don't want to take any time away from her doing that, I think what I'm going to do is like Saturday night, I'll go ahead and premiere the episode for Destroyed by Love, right? And then do the Ezra McCandless. I feel like I'm saying her name because there's 2 C's. McCandless? I don't know how to say it. McCandless? Anyway. Um, and then, of course, Valentine's Day is Monday, so I'll have an episode for that. So, there you go.
Sounds like a plan, Stan.
Thank you, Mo. You smack them
I,
hands. Hey, hey, hey.
I think y'all are gonna like this case. It has all the things.
Oh, well, I didn't like look a whole lot at it, but when I was looking at pictures to put together for this, I was like, oh, McCandless. McCandless. Okay.
McCandless.
McCandless. So when I was looking at pictures, I saw some stuff and I was like, oh. So yeah, I'm very excited to cover this. But anyway, I guess we should get started. Dr. B will be here in just a little while. Share screen. Hold on. What am I doing? Oh, I need help already. 2 minutes in and I already have problems. All right, y'all ready? Here we go.
This case is about an extreme anger and a twisted form of love. A love so dangerous that the defendant killed Alexander Woodworth in an attempt to recapture the relationship she wanted with Jason Mingle. This is not a case of whodunit. The person who done it, the person who brutally killed Alex by stabbing him over and over again, is sitting before you today, the defendant Ezra McCandless. The defendant that acted on March 22nd, 2018 is not the meek, mild, fearful girl that you might want to see. Throughout this trial, you will see who the real defendant was. So who was Alex and how did Alex and the defendant meet? Alex wasn't your typical 24-year-old. He had a Bachelor of Science degree from UW-Eau Claire with a major in philosophy and a minor in biology. At the time of his death, he was applying to graduate schools to fulfill his lifelong dream of obtaining his PhD and becoming a professor in philosophy. In many ways, reading philosophy and writing about philosophy
Hey,
is part of
AJ.
Alex's life.
Good to see you. Welcome back.
Alex spent hours upon hours reading books, reading different philosophy books, and writing about those interpretations in his journals. In fact, those journals will be used in this trial in an attempt to show that the defendant was afraid of Alex. However, when you don't take bits and pieces out of context, when you read the whole journals, you will realize that these are philosophical musings of a young man who wanted to be a philosophy professor. And in fact, the evidence will show that it was the defendant who sought out Alex on the date of his death. Not once, but twice that day. Alex spent most of his days at Racy's coffee shop in Eau Claire. Some would say it's the place he felt most at home, where he felt safe. He was going to Racy's through college. He would sit there all day, reading books, drinking coffee, writing in his journals. Most of his friends were from the Racy's crowd, and he also worked at Racy's coffee shop. Unfortunately for Alex, that's also the same place where he met the person who would later take his life. The defendant and Alex met in October of 2017, and shortly thereafter began dating. Also, unfortunately for Alex, the defendant was involved in a complex series of other relationships. At the time, she was involved in a relationship with Jason Mengel, and later she was also involved in an intimate relationship with John Hansen. You will hear information regarding these relationships throughout this trial in the months leading up to Alex's death. And the reason why you are hearing these is to gain insight into the defendant's state of mind and what drove her to her actions on March 22nd. In February of 2018, Jason Mengel learned of the defendant's relationship with John Hansen. He learned that while he was away from military training, the defendant had an intimate relationship with his good friend, John Hansen. He also learned that the defendant had an intimate relationship with Alex. And Jason Mengel confronted the defendant about that. And she responded by saying that Alex had taken advantage of her. And after these relationships came to light, the defendant's relationship with Jason Mengel ended. And the defendant's life began to spiral out of control. She had to move back to Stanley, Wisconsin, a place she did not want to be. She had to live with her parents, where she was away from the art scene in Eau Claire, away from her friends at Racy's coffee shop, and most importantly, she was away from the love of her life, the love of the man that she was truly obsessed with, Jason Mengel. In her journals, she describes her relationship with Jason Mengel as an ancient love so powerful that it scares them both. The defendant then began to blame Alex for her relationship problems with Jason Mengel. And around February 24th of 2018, the defendant sent a message to Alex instructing him to not talk to her ever again. And Alex obeyed that demand. From February 24th to the date of his death on March 22nd, there was no communication between the two of them. Instead, it was the defendant who sought out Alex. In an interview to law enforcement, the defendant was asked, what was so important that you had to see Alex that day? And she explained that she had a heating pad and a bookmark that she had to return to Alex. And despite returning those items to Alex, she insisted on going someplace in nature to talk. You will hear that the defendant's acts on March 22nd, 2018 were particularly unusual. I have a timeline of events to show you, and I realize it will be hard for you to read these, but it's more of an aid to help me, but you will be able to should be able to at least see the pictures. So on that day, the defendant ends up taking her car, despite being specifically told by her dad not to drive. And despite her dad hiding her car keys, she takes her keys, finds her keys, and somehow drives to Eau Claire. And she is seen on the traffic cameras in the city of Eau Claire in an area near Alex's apartment at 10:43 a.m. She's seen again at approximately 10:50 a.m. And law enforcement were able to identify the defendant's car as it's rather distinctive, as it has a number of drawings on it. At approximately 10:53 a.m., she arrives at Racy's coffee shop. And when she arrives at Racy's coffee shop, she sees Jason Mengel before she goes inside. And Jason Mengel will later tell you that he sees a fire in her eyes. The defendant then goes inside Racy's coffee shop, buys a cup of coffee, and leaves a tip. While for most defendants that wouldn't be unusual, for this defendant, she very rarely paid for her coffee. She either got free coffee or got someone else to buy it for her. And she certainly never left a tip. The person serving her coffee that day describes her appearance as different and that she was disheveled, she wasn't wearing makeup. The defendant then leaves and goes to Max Martinson's house to do some sort of art exchange. And then she comes back to Racy's. And during this time, her ex sort of boyfriend, they were on shaky ground, gets particularly concerned. He recalls seeing this fire in her eyes, and he has a bad feeling. He also realized that the defendant had been doing some journaling about feeling taken advantage of and feeling like she had been assaulted. Jason also remembered that the defendant said that she felt like her voice had been taken and she wanted to get her voice back. So Jason Mingle, he gets concerned and he decides to go on his bike and he starts to head to John Hansen's house. And as he goes to John Hansen's house, he remembers, oh no, John Hansen moved, so he goes to Alex's house. So he rides his bike to Alex's house, and when he arrives, he sees the defendant's car in the driveway at Alex's house. The car is running, the door is open, and music is playing. Jason Mingle gets concerned again. So he decides to go sort of across the street from where Alex's house is. He's sitting at a picnic table, smoking some cigarettes, and then he decides, I'm gonna just go in Alex's house. So he goes in Alex's house and learns that everything's okay. And as he's exiting Alex's house, he is confronted by the Eau Claire police. So a janitor who had watched Jason Mingle while he was smoking some cigarettes thought this was unusual. So the police come, and Jason Mingle describes to them, this bad feeling, the fire in her eyes. And then the police go and talk to the defendant and Alex. And the defendant specifically tells the police, everything's fine. She doesn't mention that she's afraid of Alex or fearful of Alex. And so the police leave, and the defendant leaves Alex's house at approximately 1:05 p.m. The defendant's in the driver's seat, and Alex is in the passenger seat. And Alex would never be seen again. At approximately 1:25 p.m., Chester Davidson, a man who was driving to work on 430th Avenue, describes seeing a vehicle at approximately 1:25 p.m. blocking his lane of traffic, such that he's traveling on 430th Avenue and he needs to kind of weave around this vehicle. And he describes seeing a female in the passenger seat, a female in the driver's seat, and a male in the passenger seat. It's not until 3 hours later, or almost 3 hours later, at 4:15 p.m. that the defendant is seen again. So let's take a look at what this nature location was where the defendant took Alex that day.
Hey, y'all want me to speed this up just a little bit?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was a narrow field drive in a very rural part of Dunn County, a place where no one could see or hear what was going on. So approximately 4:15, well, what happens between those 3 hours? From 1:25 to 4:15, the defendant brutally stabs Alex, takes the knife she used, takes Alex's phone, and goes to Don Sibble's house, about a half a mile away. She ditches the phone and knife, though, before she goes and sees Don Sibble. And she makes contact with Don Sibble and asks him to call a doctor. Well, Don Sibble decides to call the police. And when the police arrive, the defendant can provide very little information. She's eventually able to provide her name as Monica Carlin. She's able to describe that she's been attacked by an unknown person or persons. She can't provide much other information than that. But when asked if there's anyone they can call, she's able to say the name Jason Mengel. So the defendant's taken by ambulance to Mayo for an evaluation. And during that evaluation, she's examined from head to toe for any injuries. And the injuries that Dr. Tillotson, or wounds if you want to call them that, I guess, that Dr. Tillotson observes are some scratch marks on her left forearm that have the words B-O-Y carved into her arm. On her left palm, 3 slight superficial lacerations or scratches on the palm of her hand. On the right outer thigh, 3 linear scratches, or not 3, but some linear scratches on the right outer thigh. A red mark along her jawline that's not there 2 days later. And some scratches near her underwear or crotch area. Dr. Tillotson describes these as self-inflicted scratches or wounds on the defendant. The defendant also undergoes a sexual assault exam. Pretty long, takes a number of hours for this examination. And during that sexual assault exam, she's again unable to provide very little information. But when asked, how did this B-O-Y get carved into your arm? The defendant states, Alex did that to me. When asked what's the last thing she remembers, she states, being at a park with Alex with a frog statue. Remember that the defendant states she's right-handed and that the alleged wounds are within arm's reach of a right-handed person. The defendant is then talked to by Deputy Emmer Shields and Officer Corey Reeves of the Eau Claire Police Department. And she again tells them that Alex carved boy into her arm. And the last thing she remembers is being at a park with a frog statue. And Officer Reeves from Eau Claire realizes or believes that this is Owen Park. The next day, on March 23rd, 2018, the Eau Claire Police Department gets concerned. Alex is missing. And so Detective Croft goes and talks to the defendant. And during that interview with the defendant, she is less than forthcoming. She's able to describe what happened earlier in the day. And then she's able to describe leaving Alex's house. But after that, she says everything just kind of goes blank for her. She remembers being scared and walking to Don Sipple's house. She has no idea. She makes no mention of stabbing Alex, no mention of Alex being by her car. And so Detective Prock, after that interview, decides to go back to Don Sipple's house. He and some other investigators decided to be proactive and try to find Alex. And they see that narrow dirt road. And as they go down that dirt road, oops, sorry, wrong one. It's on the screen. They see Alex's body hanging out of the back of the vehicle. And so Detective Prock decides he's going to go talk to the defendant again. So they begin their interview, and Detective Prock asks about the defendant's relationship with Alex. And the defendant describes that they were friends, and then their relationship turned sexual. And even though it was consensual, they had a consensual sexual relationship, it just felt wrong to her. She's unable to provide some information how Alex was calling her the wrong pronouns, where she used to have more, or I guess we call it by more masculine pronouns, but now she was identifying with more female pronouns. But Alex was continuing to use the masculine pronouns. And then Detective Prock asked her again about the boy, B-O-Y, carved into her arm. So let's take a listen and see what she has to say about that.
Alex is using pronouns that weren't my pronouns.
Okay.
I used to go by my neutral pronouns in high school and more masculine pronouns. I talked a little bit about it. I was kind of going through identity things.
Okay.
But now I go by her pronouns because I find it comfortable.
Okay.
But he kept using my he pronouns because he preferred it.
Okay.
And he used to call me boy a lot, stuff like that. And I was just kind of like, I don't really identify that way anymore.
Okay.
It's like I identify feminine and stuff because in the past I just kind of was more masculine for having self protection.
Okay. And so this injury, so what happened? How did this get, or I said, the way you described it is like on your arms?
Yeah.
Something happened? What happened there?
I remember, like, that's when my anxiety got really bad, is because I remember just kind of being really uncomfortable because I don't like when people grab me.
Okay.
I remember just kind of like being grabbed, and then just kind of like the anxiety went crazy, like completely through the roof. The anxiety went up.
Okay.
And then sometimes when that happens, it's just like everything goes black for a while.
So where were you when you were grabbed?
I was in the car.
Okay. And how did he grab you?
Grabbed me by the arm, like right there.
Okay. Where was he?
He was in the passenger. He was in the driver's. I was in the passenger. I don't know if I think we probably were parked.
Okay.
I think it was before we started driving again.
Okay.
And it was just because I remember it happening, like being grabbed and just feeling hurt and anxious, and then it just starts getting really, really dark, fuzzy for me. Just feeling so anxious.
Okay. And so how does your arm get cut up?
Alex, like he grabbed it, and then he kept telling me about being a boy and stuff like that, how frustrating it is, and then he threatened me.
What do you mean he threatened you?
He didn't say he was gonna do something, but he grabbed me and started doing something.
What do you mean he started doing something?
He started carving something in my arm.
Where is this? On your arm?
His arm.
Can I see?
After that conversation, Detective Proc asked the defendant, I know you had a sexual assault exam. Do you believe that you were sexually assaulted? And the defendant responds, well, she doesn't know. She just...
One question I have is, after this incident, did you do anything to yourself?
And so he asked her about, do you think you were sexually assaulted? And the defendant says, well, I don't know. I just thought that maybe I was sexually assaulted because my pants were cut near my crotch area. And then Detective Proc confronts the defendant. He tells the defendant, we found your car. And I think you know what happened. And the defendant responds in the same interview, yeah. The defendant is unable to say and provide a detailed explanation of the stabs that she made on Alex's body, the different locations, as well as a detailed description of the sequence of events that happened that day. And then Detective Proc asks her, are you sure you carved, or that Alex carved boy in your arm? So let's listen to what she says during this time.
One question I have is, after this incident, did you do anything to yourself? Did you harm yourself in any way?
No, I didn't want to.
You said, well, what happened?
I didn't harm myself.
You didn't?
No, when I fell, I hurt my hand and I bit my tongue.
Okay. And then the boy carved in your arm. Okay. The part that throws me off on that is, if I'm sitting here and he's going to be carving it in, it's written perfect with a right-hand person like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if he would have written it in, it would have been reversed, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did the boy get put in your arm? He didn't do that to you, did he? You carved a boy into your arm. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When did that happen?
That happened when I was in the car.
In the car with him? Or why?
When I was in the car after I woke up the second time.
So after you stabbed him and you came back into it, as you put it, because you blacked out, that's when you carved this in?
So within the same interview, the defendant then explains what really happened with the boy on her arm. Detective Proc then asks her, do you think that Alex was trying to sexually assault you that day or have sex with you? And the defendant says, no, I just think he wanted to look at me. Ladies and gentlemen, this was not a knife fight, as the defendant would like you to believe. The defendant used this knife, a knife she had taken from her dad's house within days before Alex's death, a sharp EMT knife. And she took this knife and she brutally and forcefully used the knife to stab Alex in the back of the head, through the scalp, through the right temporal bone, into the brain, piercing the brain. She used this knife to slit him across the throat 3 times on the right side. She stabbed him 3 times on the left side. And if that wasn't enough, she brutally stabbed him 3 times on the left side of the chest, with one of the blows piercing Alex's lung. She stabbed him in the back right of the shoulder, and she stabbed him in the back, also piercing the lung. And of course, she stabbed him in the genitals, piercing the scrotal sac. Ladies and gentlemen, this was not anger. This was rage, and this was personal. Even after Alex has been stabbed 16 times, does she use Alex's phone to call for help? No. She has the time and apparent presence of mind to carve B-O-Y into her arm. And why did she carve B-O-Y into her arm? In her very own words, so she wouldn't forget. Because she felt bad, and so she wouldn't forget. But moments later, when she walks to Don Simple's house, she forgets. She forgets everything that happened. The physical evidence and the DNA evidence in this case are important as they contradict the defendant's statements.
Holy
The defendant describes with
guacamole.
detail during her interview with Detective Proc that as she was stuck in the mud in that nature location, as she called it, she was looking for something to get some traction under the car. And she realizes that Alex is behind her with a knife. And so then she kind of rolls over onto the back seat of the car, and Alex is cutting her clothes. And she claims that she's able to grab the knife and forcefully take that knife by grabbing the blade, despite having scratches on her left hand, despite the fact that she's right-handed too. And she claims that the majority of the fight happened inside the car. But when you look at the DNA evidence from inside the car. These points were all Alex's DNA. The only DNA that was found in the vehicle that belonged to the defendant was on the rear side of the door, over there. You will learn that the
Was the DA's office short on glue
results
sticks?
of the
They couldn't
defendant's sexual
glue
assault
the whole
exam
picture down?
excluded Alex's DNA on the genital and cervical swabs of the defendant's body. The only place Alex's DNA is found on the defendant's body is near those scratches by her underwear line. And so when you examine the DNA evidence, think to yourself, how could Alex's DNA get there? If she used the same knife to carve BOY into her arm, could she also have used that knife to carve herself there? Ask yourself, is it possible for Alex's DNA, his blood on that knife, to transfer onto her body? You'll also hear that Alex's DNA was under the defendant's fingernails. Of course it was. She brutally stabbed him 16 times. That blood is going to drip down the blade of that knife under her hands and fingernails. You will hear a lot of testimony over the next 3 weeks. This isn't like what you see on TV. We're not going to be done in an hour. We're going to be here for a number of weeks. And during that time, I want you to pay close attention to the demeanor of witnesses on that witness stand. I want you to
Thank you,
examine carefully
AJ.
that
Welcome to
testimony with
members.
physical evidence, with the photographs, with the Instagram records, text messages. And then I want you to take the law as the judge describes and apply the facts to that law. And when you do, and when the state has met its burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant killed Alexander Woodworth, I will ask that you return a verdict of a verdict of guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. Thank you.
It's 10 after 4.
Dave G, I feel
Ezra,
like I have.
this
Let
is
me hit
scary.
up the Googles right quick.
She's running. She's falling. She's running. She sees a house, a farm, a door. She follows the driveway. She gets to the back. She walks up the steps, comes to the door, and rings the bell over and over and over again. A farmer from our community sees her.
Yes.
She's
Yes,
disheveled.
yes, yes,
She
Dave
has
G.
blood on her face,
Hulu has
cut on her
an
lip,
excellent documentary
mark
on it.
on her neck. She's wearing a flannel shirt, sweater underneath, cut open, shirt cut up. Pants, cut up. There's blood on her legs. There's a little blood on her front. Her pants are covered in mud. She has no shoes. Her farmer opens the door. She says, "Take me to the hospital." He brings her in, finds her a seat. She says, "I was attacked." She's in shock. She's confused. She's disoriented. He sees she's in distress. She's upset. He asks, "Who attacked you?" She doesn't know who attacked her. She doesn't know what happened. She doesn't know where it happened. She doesn't know much.
Okay, I thought maybe we should pause just for a second to discuss the opening statement. What did you guys think?
I think she did a good job. I think they do a good job with this whole case, but we just watched Todd, so it's a big difference.
Well, I mean,
And sorry about the picture. I downloaded this one, so I didn't watch it.
oh, what's wrong with the picture? I don't know what you're talking about.
In the car.
What's wrong
Never
with
mind.
the blood?
His body in the car.
Oh, was it in there? I
Yeah.
didn't see that. Hold on. I must have missed it. Hold on. Let me go back and look. Is it blurred out?
No.
Hold on.
Alex.
No, it's,
Forward more.
yeah. I think he just passed it.
Cripes.
Right there.
What this nature location was where the defendant took Alex that day. So this was a narrow field drive in a very rural part of Thunder County, a place where no one could see or hear what was going on. So approximately 4:15.
Is it
what
past
happened
this or
between
what?
those 3 hours? From
Yeah, I
1:25
think
to
so.
4:15.
You're not helping me, Ugh, I don't even care. Sorry, it was already out. I mean, you're allowed to have it. You just have to be. It has to be like shown,
Junior.
with educational purpose or something like that.
Okay.
I can.
Well,
Trigger warning
it was
and
quick.
yada yada yada.
What? What, Shmita?
I said trigger warning, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
It was quick, obviously, if you didn't see it.
Well, I was also typing in chat, so I can't. Yeah, I couldn't do both.
Jen was also looking at making sure it was glued on properly.
Well, I was annoyed by that because when she picked it off, it was like picked it up and took it off the stand or whatever. Like it folded up, and I'm just thinking, were they short on glue sticks? These are the thoughts that run through my head. Okay. I would probably have written it down in my juror's notes. Hey, Molson Man, welcome back. You haven't really missed much. We're just into the opening statements, and we're just finished with the prosecution. But what I'm noticing here, first of all, it was very sounds like brutal. It sounds like she came with a story immediately, and based on the audio that they played of her story, it doesn't sound like it matches the evidence of what happened. This has nothing to do with guilt or innocence, but hey, Dr. B.
Hi.
But the hairdo is really bothering me, and I'll tell you why. First of all, this part that she has, where she has this little single big curl right here, and then it's uneven. It's like not a straight. It's very, very annoying, and it's like too much of a chunk. It's not. She intended it to soften her looks. It did not work. This has nothing to do with guilt or innocence. This is just me being petty. What's up, Dr. B? What's she doing?
What's up? Nothing. Just my natural habitat, in the car.
I think
How's
it's at
everyone doing?
13:59 if you need to look at it.
Okay, I'll look at it later. I'm not going to go back and look at it. It is what it is. Look, here's the deal. I'm going to, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is they tell me, we can only run limited ads. Okay. Instead of making 10 cents, I make 6. You know, it's the truth. Not really that worried about it. I just want to make sure that nobody gets offended. But I suppose if everybody is in here knowing it's a true crime case, you might, and it's trial. So
yeah, there's a lot of pictures coming up in the next few days too. So trigger warning ahead of time.
Y'all, you know what? This trigger warning stuff really gets on my nerves. We got people on YouTube like real-lifing each other and like going for each other's throats and their families and kids, and we're over here worried about a flash. Yeah.
I know. Yeah,
I agree.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. We do have.
That's
People.
where I'm at today. I'm
I hear
jaded.
you. I hear you. I feel like, I feel like we've got people going like full scorched earth, and I'm not talking about going full scorched earth. Okay, not like some wishy-washy idea of scorched earth. I'm talking about the whole mother of dragons, Dracarys, all the things. Okay, like I'm out. I don't want to have. Man, my name is Paul, and that is between y'all. I don't like it at all. That's why we're over here doing this. We're gonna figure.
What was that? See, I already forgot the other. My name is
All right,
Paul,
my name is
and I ain't with
Paul.
y'all.
No, my name is Paul, and that's between y'all.
Oh, okay.
Wouldn't it make more sense to say my name isn't Paul?
No. My name is Bennett, and I ain't in it. That's my other one. That's my other one. Well, I much rather be petty and talk about this wonky curl that she's got going on here and this bun. I mean,
oh, I love petty.
That's my petty. This is what
I
I'd
do love
rather.
the blazer. Like, she's totally got my style. So when this trial first came on, that was one of the comments my sister made. Like, oh, she looks like she rummaged through your closet, and it's like, gee, thanks.
I do love a shell cardigan. I do.
Well, obviously you didn't see the picture, so you missed her reaction to when they put it up.
Well, what was
Maybe
the
it was because
reaction?
it was in fast speed, but it was a little over the top.
Oh yeah, she's very dramatic.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure
She
we'll
was
have
like,
I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to see many.
For sure. I can't wait for Jason Mengel's testimony because let me tell y'all, ladies, he's a little bit of a eye candy.
Yeah,
Mm.
he is good looking. When I was
But I don't like he does the whole Echo Roger. It's like, no, dude, just spell your
come
name.
on. The court reporter's sitting like 3 feet away from you, if that, maybe 2.
Yeah.
Calm down. It ain't that deep.
You better be damn good looking.
He is
yeah.
actually, hey DD, he is actually pretty good looking. And when I made that opening and I was putting their pictures together, I manipulated the picture so it looks like they're looking at each other.
Well, they totally were. Oh my god,
I know,
she was
but
like
it's hard.
drooling.
Yeah,
She
but
was
it's
like,
hard to do
"Oh,
that from
hi."
just a picture. You know what I'm saying? Because I knew,
Totally.
so I manipulated it to look like they're staring at each other like they were.
Oh my gosh, totally. Like they were, like she was totally. Oh my god, I can't wait. All right, I'll shut up.
You don't have to shut up, but I'm going to push play so that we can get through this. I forget where I was.
The analyst.
I feel like this right here.
So good
Here
to
we
see
go.
you, girl. I miss you.
It's so good to see everybody. I'm so glad you guys are becoming regulars. My familiars are here. Loves it. All right, here we go.
Police arrive. Ezra and Alex come out, and they talk to the police. Ezra, in her easygoing, cooperative manner, speaks with them. Eau Claire Police Department Officer Christopher O'Neill talks with both Ezra and her ex-boyfriend, and he says, "Everything's okay. Everything's good."
Okay, I didn't want to pause, but then I caught this comment. First of all, Vincent's missing ear, which is
love it.
I love it because I happen to be a fan of Van Gogh and all of his shenanigans, plus his art, right? But this is probably the best use of a Game of Thrones reference I've seen in a very, very long time. And I just want to acknowledge that. Well played. Very well played. All right, now I'm playing pause. I'm gonna push play for reals.
$12.50. Everything's good. $4.10. She's suffering from what our experts say is post-traumatic stress disorder. How did she get from here to here? What happened? That's what this case is about. What happened? Ezra and her ex-boyfriend
There was a red
are out in
box.
the middle of nowhere.
Oh, it's a
stuck in the
blank
mud.
space. I see.
While it's the middle of
Okay.
nowhere, it's a place familiar to many.
Paula walking.
She's on her
Thank
back.
you.
In the back seat.
Can you push
of a
pause
car.
for a second?
Her ex-boyfriend
I can,
holding her down.
Thank
but
you.
I won't.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say though what Vince's ear said and what Paula just said is like the best compliment that like any YouTube creator could get.
It really is.
So thank you guys.
It really is. It totally warmed my cold, dead heart, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, my bangs went straight in the upward melanated position. So thank you.
My curl went real swirled. All right.
You're blocked.
What?
I said you're on block. Jeez.
All right, here we go.
Sorry, Shmita, we have emotions.
Sorry, Shmita.
We'll put them out now immediately.
We will button it up.
You came back. You still love me. He takes off her glasses, puts them in the back window well. He touches her. Ezra is beautiful. Ezra is handsome. Ezra is my shining star. They're in this backseat with him on top. Her head is to the passenger side. Her feet are near the open door. There's one open door. It's on the driver's side. As he's on top of her, he takes his scarf and he covers her eyes. Now, he's done this before. When they've had sex in his apartment in the past, she's agreed. He's done that before. But even when she agreed, it was unnerving. In the darkness that he created, he pushes forward, forces himself on her, and he kisses her. She turns and says no. He keeps touching her. You abandoned me. You owe me this. He's touching her. She's tense. Her body is not moving. She regresses in her mind to the times in the past and thinks, let's just get this over with. Then he starts cutting. He has a knife. Takes her sweater. He starts short, slow, methodical strokes, and he cuts her sweater. I want one last time. I deserve one last time. She's afraid. Frozen in her fear, she lays still. He keeps cutting. As he cuts through her sweater, he cuts through her next shirt, and he cuts through her t-shirt, and he nicks her on the stomach. She's afraid. Frozen in fear, she lays still. He's never cut her before. He's cut her clothes. He's never cut her before. He moves down. He's cutting her pants. Cuts the inside of her left leg. Cuts the inside of her right leg open. He cuts open her leggings. He's on top of her. He has a knife. He's cutting. She's terrified. Frozen in fear, she lays still. Her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend, Alex, she knows him. She knows that he is a nihilist, and you'll hear about that. He believes life has no meaning. There are no consequences for one's moral actions. She has been back in his apartment before. She's heard his ramblings on about Kierkegaard and fear and trembling. One of his favorite things to tell her about was the story of Abraham and Isaac. The story in which Abraham was gifted a son, Isaac. And Abraham loved Isaac more than anything, anyone in the world. But there came a day when Abraham was asked to sacrifice his son. So he took him up in secret, didn't tell anybody else. And Abraham takes his son Isaac out to go and kill him. God intervened and saved Isaac. Ezra did not want to be his sacrifice. She's heard his ramblings before, where he's read to her from his journals, read to her while they were having sex. I've half-heartedly tried to isolate myself from you, afraid I would taint you, yet I love you. I am sorry for this failure on my part. I know my touch would kill you, yet I reach out. That is my sin, the violence of my flesh that I lack a soul to correct. She knows of his writings about consent. His writings, merely doing it as one will sexually, makes consent irrelevant. She would hear him repeat over and over and over again his personal mantra: love and do as you will.
She did nonstop, Mom.
She's read his writings
Yes.
about ritual, the mutilation of bodies, self-mutilation, severance of our flesh. Faith demands that we take a razor to our own most. She's read of his fascination with violence. The secret is not avoiding the violence, but in living with it. She knows of his captivation with cannibalism. All are contaminated with violence and vulnerability. He writes about eating and being eaten. Now on March 22nd, in that backseat of the car, he's on top of her. He has the knife. He's cutting her shirt, or her pants. He's cutting her leggings. He cuts her leg. She's terrified. He moves towards her vagina. And he cuts right next to her vagina. She is terrified. She knows she can no longer remain still. She must act. She reaches with her right arm underneath the seat to get some leverage. And she twists her body so that she's on her left hip, pulling up her right hip. She pulls her right leg up to protect her vagina. And as she does so, he jabs a knife into her thigh, into her upper thigh. He then starts cutting her pants. On her thigh, there were no threes. He cuts through her leggings on her thigh. He starts cutting up and down along her leg. She's frozen, afraid, knows she must act. Then he jabs her with the knife a second time. And then it all happens in a rush. She's fighting. She's wrestling, she's fighting, she's kneeing, she's kicking, she's using her hands, she knocks the knife, cuts her hand, she gets the knife. And she needs to get out. He is on top of her, he is in the car, there is one way out, it's through that door. She tries to scoot around through the well of the seat, her bottom's through there, he's still between her, he's stopping her, he's preventing her, he doesn't let her get out. She moves towards the back of the seat, where eventually, if this is the front, back of the front seat, her back is up against the seat, Alex is right here, the open door is here, he's not letting her out. She can't get out, he's holding her, he's attacking her. It happens in a rush and she stabs him. He reaches out and he grabs her throat. He pushes her head up against the headrest. She can't breathe. She can't breathe. She's struggling for her life. He holds her neck, he squeezes her neck, and he looks her in the eyes. And she just stabs anywhere and everywhere that she can. She is terrified. And he doesn't stop. He reaches his hand up and he pulls at her hair and he whips her hair out and she screams, "Let go!" And he keeps doing it. He won't stop. She stabs him more. He doesn't stop. She stabs him. She wants out. He won't let her out. She stabs him in the head. He stops. He gets out of the car. That's the red mark. Hours later at the hospital, to her neck. That's her hair in the well of the car, the driver's side rear passenger seat, where he left it after he pulled it out. He's now out of the car. He's on his feet. He's walking. He's up and about. Look at his pants. We'll talk more about that later. He's up. He's walking about. He's in this area here. You can see his blood in different patches on the ground. He's staggering around. She's sitting at the edge of the seat, overwhelmed, afraid, confused, doesn't know what to do. He's still up. She's cautious. She watches him. She hears him. He says, "I need help." She's afraid, but she wants to help. She stands. She steps and approaches him. He approaches her, and then all of a sudden it's happening again. He grabs her again. He pulls her in. He's pulling her down. He is in. He pulled her in. She has the knife. She reaches around, stabs him one last time. He lets go. She backs up. He stands there. He takes off his coat, throws it on the ground, and lays on the ground. She backs up back to the seat where she sits in total shock, overwhelmed, hyperventilating, panicked. It goes dark. She's in the present. It goes dark. It's present. She's worried she's going to pass out. Her mind is racing. Her body is not responding. It feels numb. She has the knife. Mindlessly and without thought, she cuts her left arm. It goes on her left arm and uses the knife to scratch a little bullet into her arm. Then she's up. She's running. She doesn't know where she's at. She goes back the same way they came. She runs up the hill. She falls. She runs. She falls. She walks. She staggers. She can see the road. She gets to the road. She walks. She runs. She falls. She falls. She drops the knife. She drops the phone. She sees the driveway, follows the driveway. She gets to the door. She talks to our farmer. She tells him, "I was attacked." Our farmer saw she was in distress, saw she was upset. He gave her help. What happened here? Her disturbed and obsessive ex-boyfriend attacked her, cut her, strangled her. She fought to survive. You'll see over the course of this trial the evidence that there was a struggle in the backseat of that car, a struggle between two people. That's not going to be the main issue that you're going to need to decide, I submit to you. The question that you're going to have in your mind is not whether she believed you, but whether her beliefs were reasonable. In order to do that, for you to determine that, you need to know more about Ezra and Alex. So let me give you a brief, quick even not as brief as we like overview. Ezra was born in Stanley, Wisconsin. Her mother, Rose, was a teenager, 14, 15 years old. Ezra's father is not a part of their life. Rose raised her there on her own while trying to juggle parenting as a teenager in high school. She eventually finds, when Ezra is born, Rose has her daughter. She names her daughter Monica. And her and Monica are the two in the world. Eventually, Rose and Monica, Rose finds Joe Shane Carter.
She looks just like her mother.
Monica.
Yeah, she does.
And she becomes Monica Carter. She grows up in that house with Rose and with Joe Shane. I'm not getting too much into the details now, but what she'll tell you, what she's told others, is living with those two in that household was like 2 tornadoes in the house.
I'm with you, Vincent's missing
That
ear.
relationship is tumultuous. And when she's 12, they divorce. Ezra is in high school. She doesn't feel comfortable in her
I
body.
agree. There's
Doesn't feel like
something
it fits
off.
with who she is.
And
She
I
starts
have
exploring other names,
a tingling
using other pronouns.
feeling.
She tries out Timothy. Doesn't really work.
I don't know, Molson, man. I
uses
haven't heard her
neutral
speak
pronouns.
yet. We'll have to
some
see.
point, she
Yeah,
changes her
Renee,
name.
that was her mom.
Legally to Ezra.
She was
McCandless.
young when she had her.
She finishes high school. She goes away to college for a year, and then she comes back. It's the summer of 2017. She's in Eau Claire. She happens upon this coffee shop, Racy's, where she meets. One of the first people she meets is Jason Mengel. Ezra is 19, and Jason, a 34-year-old medic within the, I believe it's the National Guard, starts dating her. They start having sex. She moves in. During this time, she's going to Racy's quite often, and she meets other people at Racy's, one of which is Alex Woodward. And over the summer and the early fall, her and Alex develop a relationship, a friendship, based upon these non-traditional ideas. He's accepting of Ezra's fluidity along the gender spectrum. He also has some odd ideas. He tells her right
Yeah,
away about
this
his
is
journey,
Jodi
his
Arias mock
fascination with
trial.
violence, his captivation
Yeah,
with
this is
cannibalism.
giving me Jody vibes.
She finds this kind of
But
a yang to her yang.
sorry, Ezra. Jody
Right?
had
She
better
thinks of
hair.
herself as a positive, glowing, and here's this interesting man who has these negative philosophies. And they
I
get along,
actually
and they talk.
cannot stand
But at this time, she's still
Jodi's
dating
bangs.
Jason, having sex
So
with Jason.
I vote
There comes to be a
for
time in the
Ezra's
fall
hair, actually.
where she's throwing up
Based on the
every day.
bangs.
all the time.
Yes,
She
in
starts to figure
trial.
out, maybe I'm
Yes,
pregnant.
I love your
Jodi's
love.
Takes a
Yes.
test.
When she
sure
did
enough,
those,
she's pregnant.
like the
She's
cute
19.
clips on the side
Her
or
mom
whatever.
Oh
warns
my
trying to
her,
look-
God.
Don't get
Yeah.
pregnant when you're a teenager.
Yes.
But I mean,
those.
like
Can't have a kid when you're
healthier, and her hair was prettier,
She doesn't talk
Yeah.
to her
like
mother.
that.
She doesn't
Yes.
talk to her adopted father. She goes through this in her own mind, sometimes with Jason, who may or may not be supporting her in the way that she wants. And eventually she decides she needs to terminate that pregnancy. She drives to Minneapolis on her birthday. She turned 20. The day she decided to have an abortion. And after that, she gets home and she's recovered, as you would imagine anyone is, for such a procedure.
She probably learned from Jody
Jason,
and got herself cleaned up
not there
first,
anymore.
just in case.
Not there to support her. He's sleeping on the couch. Their relationship in public may seem as if they're girlfriend, boyfriend, but he doesn't want any part of her anymore. In fact, at some point he physically leaves. He leaves her alone after this to go off on his own spiritual quest. 3 weeks out west, while his 20-year-old girlfriend, recovering from an abortion with his children, is home alone, trying to sort that out. During this time, she seeks solace from others. And her and Alex get along really well. They talk. He's accepting of her regretful decision. He's accepting of her. He listens. The relationship is intense. And at some point in November, it turns sexual. She's living with Jason. She's having sex with Alex. Her and Jason are no longer in the same bed. They're not intimate.
Hold on a second.
Her relationship with Alex continues.
Yeah. I read that too.
Oh, Dave G, I didn't know that. I knew.
Wait, what happened?
Bob Saget's cause of death is head trauma. He accidentally hit the back of his head and unalived in his sleep.
Oh.
I thought they were thinking
The life
initially,
insurance.
huh?
I said, or it's something to do with life insurance.
Oh, Shmita. Oh, Shmita. I feel like if they're, I mean, maybe, but that's crazy because I think they were thinking initially that it was like a coronary event.
Jesus, I
had-
feel like I'm in a freaking high-speed chase. Sorry.
Sounds like you are.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Get the bail money ready.
Always. All right, here we go. Wow, that's crazy. Thanks, Dave G, for letting me know that. That's wow.
Continues to grow in intensity. They don't see each other all the time, but they're at races, exchanging journals. You'll see her doodles in his journals, where she learns about some of his philosophies.
Shmita never thinks
And in the
anything is
beginning,
an
sex is
accident.
rather vanilla.
It's always sinister
He
with
likes to have sex with
Shmita.
her when she's in the prone position. She comes to learn that he likes that look upon her in the back, in which she looks more masculine. The sex grows in intensity, it becomes painful, becomes rough. Sometimes she just goes along. Sometimes she says, no, that hurts, stop. And he doesn't listen. And she just goes along.
Renee,
Yeah.
I'm in Chicago.
Come
Where
January,
else would I be?
juggling these two, Jason and Alex. Alex wants more of a commitment from her. Alex says,
That's
want
what
you to
I
be
thought,
mine,
Molson,
fully
man.
mine.
Some kind
He's
of,
like, no, this is getting
heart
too
attack or
intense.
whatever
Can't do that. I'm not ready to do that.
situation.
And Alex says, well, if I can't have you,
Sad.
I don't want to be here.
That's what
And he
I'm
calls her up
saying.
and he tells her
Alley
that he attempted
79.
suicide. She comes over and she sees him in January where
The
he'd taken a
YouTube
Yeah,
knife
it is.
and he cut his
The
wrists.
YouTube streets are talking
He
the
tells her
talk
about
while
how
I'm
that
out
meant to
here.
him. He tells her about how
walking
easy
the
it was
walk.
to use that
That's
knife
right,
because
Doug
he's
Life.
like suffering.
Don't let
Doesn't
him
feel pain.
forget.
And she's conflicted. Jason
Yeah,
is actually
I
there
wish
with
we
her.
played
Jason
that
helps to
song
bandage
now.
up Alex's arms. And she's conflicted and she's back again saying, okay, I will continue to be with Alex. During this time, she reads different portions of Alex's journal. I just want to read some of these to you as it evolves through time. In November, Alex writes, I was further contaminated. This is all mutated. I wanted to be happy, but felt unworthy. I wanted to be loved, but refused to believe it possible. I wanted to be alive, but lacked a heart. And you hurt me. I hated myself through you. And you were a living death. Everything I said came to be a lie. I had to escape the monster I became with you. You did not deserve it, nor did I. Later in November, he writes, I mistook the innocent play, your desire for my hunger. I saw cannibalism where you asked to be seen erotically. Again in November, I destroy what I find. I break things apart to see what they're really made of, for better or for worse. I have a habit of breaking people's lives, of destroying and analyzing them. I am attacking this for the sake of my sadism. In December, he writes, I have been cautious, gentle, tender, and careful. Little do most know that this is precisely how one makes their way around in the dark. In the dark, one touches more to learn than to manipulate. Devoid of sight, we use our hands to explore. Utterly vulnerable. Vulnerable explanation is intentionally
You're
gentle,
right,
out of
Max
self-concern.
2002. You're not
Aggression
supposed to do
backfires
that.
when obstacles are unknown. Hunting in the dark, as he likes to call it. In
Can
December,
we
he
just
says, I am
acknowledge
in so much pain because you love me, and still you hope to
push
abandon me
pause
to my
just for a
loneliness
second
again.
because I feel like, can we just acknowledge like just what good of a writer Alex was? Like
He-
this is just really good.
He
Like,
was a good writer, and I think that I think they're taking some of the things that he wrote
oh
literally.
yeah,
When-
which is not gonna fly because the guy is a philosophy major.
Correct. And if he's reading,
Yeah.
I'm never going to say the name right. It's Kierkegaard,
Kierke-
right?
Kierkegaard.
Kierkegaard.
Mm, I love me some Kierkegaard.
He's not literal either.
Yeah.
You got to be careful with that.
Yeah.
These are metaphors. These are metaphors. These are, come on. It's a little bit of it's a deeper level of thinking. It's not surface.
Yeah,
I
and
hated philosophy class.
oh, I love it.
I
It's
love
just-
it. That's my favorite.
Oh, I had
Yeah.
to wear a tank top and go talk to my professor just to get a B.
wear were you wearing a skirt too? Maybe if you'd wore a skirt, you got an A.
I
I
probably
know.
did have a skirt on. Or short
Oh,
shorts. One or the other.
see, that was your first mistake. You don't do that in philosophy class. In philosophy,
Because I should have got a D.
oh well, then your professor wasn't on that good philosophy. See, on the good philosophy, the more you cover up, the more
Mm-hmm.
you are intriguing.
Yep.
And that means like psychologically as well, which is why Ezra got as far as she did. Because her whole life she's been tank topping around.
Aw, thank you, Cheryl Stone. Welcome to members. Clap. Four times a year.
Oh, like 3, not 4.
Oh boy. Are we ready?
Yep.
Aye, aye, Captain.
All right.
In February, as their
What'd I do
relationship is
here?
dwindling.
Oops.
For to give purely to suicide can involve a cessation of violence. But it is the
I don't know why I
obligation
did this.
to not die oddly. I must commit violence against another. Other to provide for this demanding other. This forces me to murder in order to provide. I am doing it either way. This demanding other has taken my redeeming suicide from me and doomed me to torturous guilt. That's her ex-boyfriend. She doesn't want to commit fully to him. She doesn't get the solace that she needs from Jason. Jason leaves sometime in February to go off on his National Guard duty. She's not hitting it off with Alex. They have another friend, a John Hanson. And John Hanson and her get together. John Hanson is older. He brings over alcohol, brings her to his house where they have alcohol, and she drinks. She gets drunk. She gets throw up drunk. Pass out, throw up drunk. After which,
Oh my God! And
John
she's
Hanson
one
and her
of
have
those
sex.
sloppy ass bitches.
The next day,
Oh,
still
hell
hungover.
no.
But not
They go back
blackout
to her
drunk.
place.
Amateur.
Nah.
Have sex. Jason comes back home a couple of weeks later, and he's looking at Ezra's phone, and he finds
She's
this
one of those that you
text
gotta
back and forth.
babysit all night.
And he confronts
You know what I'm
Ezra,
saying?
pushes her on the bed,
Yes.
asks her about sex with
No,
John Hanson.
Ezra, you cannot
He calls
go
John
pee
Hanson,
by
his
that
friend.
tree. Get over here.
Demanding to know why his friend would have sex
The
with
one
his
that
gal.
wants to talk about her
Is it his
feelings
possession?
all of a sudden.
John Hanson
I know.
denies
When
it.
you're having a good time and all you want to do
Jason
is
Mango
dance.
is wound up.
The one that
Very,
just wants
very
to go
upset.
get a drink
Her,
and then
Jason
never
and
comes
Ezra go
back.
back
And
to
it's
their
Right.
friend
so
Josh's place.
just grab
Josh
her
is
by
worried
that
about Jason.
curl and bring
Worried
her
what
back
Jason's going
to
to do
the
based on Jason's
table.
words, Jason's demeanor,
The one
everything
you
else.
have to watch
Josh
their drink
decides to
because
call
they're
the
not
police.
watching it.
I'm worried about what
Yeah.
Jason might do. So the police are called. The police come over and they start talking to Jason like, "What's going on? What are you so upset about?" And Jason says, "My girlfriend was sexually assaulted." The police ask to talk to Ezra.
The one that's like when
Ask
we're
Ezra if she wants to
walking
talk.
back to the
There,
car,
in
she's
presence of
like,
Jason,
"Can we
we're
just
down at the
sit down
station.
for a second?"
She doesn't want to talk about it.
It's like, oh hell no, she's gonna throw up.
Yes. The one that, yeah, can we just stop? Or I need to hold on to the wall. I've got the
Yeah.
spins.
Why are the lights moving so fast? Has this always been like that?
Yeah, that one, that kind. And the kind that's rude about
Can I
the where
tell
they
you? Can I
throw
tell
up.
you a story
Please tell us
about
the
one
story.
of those? Yes. So my BFF is one of those friends that you have to babysit, and you know we were going home from Lollapalooza, and she started looking at the light lines on the street.
Oh,
And
God, that's
and she's
always a
like,
mistake.
she's like, oh my God, I can't stop looking at it. I'm like, stop it, look up. And then she looked up and then she's like, oh no, I can't stop looking at the lights. So I just started putting the window down and she just put her head out and she started, puking. But we were at a festival, so like we, had a bunch of like props and stuff.
Mhm.
So when I got home, first I had to carry her home, and then I got home, and then I have all this stuff at the side of my car. So I grabbed one of the like little scarves that's, I don't know, I call it a scarf. It's not a scarf. It's one of those things that's made out of feathers, like
A boa.
maybe.
Yes.
And I just like, I just used that to like wipe the side of the car and like threw that in the trash. And the next morning, like took the car to the car wash because I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not dealing with this. And I didn't realize that all those feathers like stuck to it.
So now you had barf and feathers. Yum.
Yeah, great. So yeah, so when the guy pulled the car around after he was done with it, he was like, "Oh, you hit a bird?" I'm like, yeah. I hit a bird."
Oh
Yes,
my God.
that is
Good night,
exactly what
nonstop
happened.
mom.
That is exactly what happened.
That is exactly
Good
what
night.
happened.
Yeah, good night, nonstop mom. Sorry, that was the long story, but yeah,
It
that's my
wasn't a lot.
story.
Oh my God. All right, here we go.
Right in front of Jason. She leaves with the police officer, and eventually they agree a couple of days later to speak. She speaks with Detective Frank about this allegation that Jason made about a sexual assault. And Ezra tells Detective Proc about being there, getting drunk, throwing up, having sex after throwing up. And at the end of that, Detective Proc tells her, well, if under those conditions, if you're too drunk, that's a sexual assault. Sometime between the time the police are called and Ezra speaks with Detective Proc about that and is told that it's a sexual assault, Jason Mengel confronts these other two men, confronts Alex, confronts John, and there's a big blow up at Racy's. A big blow up in which the men are all yelling and Ezra's inside. After that, Ezra breaks up with Alex, says, we're done, I can't do this anymore. She doesn't want anything to do with John Hanson. She goes home. She goes back to Stanford, where she stays with her mom, she stays with her dad. And it's during this time in March, after she meets with Detective Proc, that she's given information, victim witness information, pamphlets about counseling, about getting your voice back, about reclaiming who you are as a person, your empowerment. And she begins to journal and to talk about her life and the traumas that she has suffered in that life. And in the end, she says, I want to be Ezra McCandless again. She's at her adoptive dad, Joe Shane Carlin's house, and she's telling him about this. She's pouring out all of this emotion about what has just happened, the intensity of what's going on for this young lady. And he says, kind of a seize the day moment, kind of a nice dad pep talk, life starts now. Life starts now. Whatever it was yesterday, whatever that was, be done with that. Be the bigger person, be the better person, starts now. So March 22nd comes along. She's up. She's an adult. She has her own car. She finds the keys and she decides to go to Eau Claire to get some stuff done in Eau Claire. She's got appointments later in the day. She's got appointments tomorrow. There's no plan to do anything other than to go and see some people, talk about her feelings. She goes to Racy's, gets a coffee. She sees her friend Max, who she wants to exchange paintings with, and she tells Max, I'm going to go see Alex later. She drives over to Max's house. They exchange this painting. She comes back. She's back at Racy's, drops off Max, says she's going to go to Alex's. She goes to Alex's, where she has this meeting with Alex. The police arrive, and everything's good. But she'll tell you that just before the police arrive, when her and
Yes,
Alex are having
Max,
this
you're right.
conversation,
She
when
didn't
she wants to
legally
confront,
have it
when
changed.
she wants to create,
It was
when she wants to
Monica or
continue
something like
different
that.
parts of the relationship.
Yeah, Monica.
When Jason interrupts. Jason walks into Alex's home.
Sorry,
into
I
Alex's
was
bedroom
distracted by
and
text
interrupts
messages
that
from my
conversation between Ezra and
daughter.
Alex. She can see everything changes with Alex. Alex never liked, as he called it, her
Hi,
gun-toting
daughter.
boyfriend. And there's some tension between Alex and Jason. And Ezra says, we'll leave. Let's go talk someplace in public. That's fine. We don't need to be in his bedroom. Let's go talk someplace in public. She sees the police. Everything's good. And off
This
they
is a
go.
really long
Ezra's
opening.
driving. Alex is in the passenger seat. As they're driving along, Alex starts
No, this is
talking,
really about normal.
telling her things about
Can't remember what the maximum
Still
amount of
going.
time is, but
you abandoned me.
it's quite a.
I think
He's
it's
reaching
an
out to touch her,
hour
and she's
and a
getting
half
anxious. She's getting nervous. She's had that happen in the
for
past where sometimes she
prosecution.
gets anxious driving and she
And
doesn't
I
want to
think the
drive.
defense
They pull
gets
over,
longer.
they switch, they continue
I
driving
don't
in a
know.
random direction.
But
They
it's-
are
I'm gonna
basically
Google.
just on County Road E, straight out of Eau Claire.
It's
Going west.
like I think actually like it
At some point, the
depends
car
on
turns off E on
where
430th
like some
Street,
courts
and it's
do
stopped in front of that muddy
limit
drive.
and others
I don't know
don't.
that big drive.
Yeah, because the
That muddy drive.
state comes
And
back
they sit
after
and they
this,
talk,
I
and they
think.
decide maybe we'll go up there.
Yeah, they
we'll
get
park,
a
we'll drive,
rebuttal.
or we'll walk, we'll talk. She doesn't know anything about a knife. She's anxious, but Alex has at that point never been threateningly violent. He's choked her during sex in the past. He's hurt her during sex in the past. But not outside of that. So she was anxious, but not afraid. Then they drive up and the car gets stuck. You'll hear from a witness who says, on the one side, the roadway is out of the sun. So it's still frozen. You can drive up that little section of the hill because it's frozen. Once you get over the top, the backside is on the south exposure. And there it's softer. There's mud. And the car gets stuck. And they try to get it unstuck. They drive into the grass. They get it stuck in the grass. And they're switching drivers. Ezra's in the driver's seat now saying, let me try to get it stuck.
I mean,
And then
so
they
far
finally
it's
drive forward,
sounding
and
like
you'll see the pictures.
their
It's just stuck for
plan
good.
is to really
are just
just
buried in
like
mud. Next
go
to a trailer.
in and paint the
They get out.
victim
He's
as
smoking
a
some cigarettes.
monster.
They're wandering around.
Pretty
trying to
much
see if they
the
can get unstuck, trying to
Jody
figure out what they can do.
defense.
She doesn't have a phone.
Yeah, pretty much.
She just simply doesn't have a phone.
PTSD
Alex
Check.
has a phone. It's
and
Alex's phone. Whether there's
abusive
reception out there or not,
boyfriend
I don't know. Maybe
Check,
we'll hear from
check.
the witness that there is. I don't know.
who was
She doesn't have a
stabbed
phone.
multiple
She
times,
sits on the edge
Check,
of the trailer.
check.
She's contemplating, kind of, what are we gonna do?
Check.
and the hair
Alex
was
is off
there
someplace
in the
else. And
blood.
Alex comes up.
Checkity
He
check.
comes- She's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
She's uncomfortable with that hug. But she's there with that hug. And Alex says, why don't you go back in the car?
Possible
Why don't you go lay
borderline
down?
personality.
Check all the
She's back in the car looking for stuff, laying down.
checks.
Yeah, I think we got ourselves turned a victim to a monster case.
Yes. Put the victim on trial.
Alex
Yes.
terrified her.
Unfortunately.
He strangled her. You're going to hear a lot of evidence about what Ezra did after this traumatic event. And I will submit to you that yes, you should consider that evidence, right? But obviously the order of the events chronologically makes it undeniable that her behavior and statements afterward are a result of the previous trauma. That's what happens. If it's not the traumatic event,
Actually,
fighting
this
for
is
her
a
life,
combination of Jody and Eileen.
what is this? How did she get to here? How did she get to PTSD?
Although I believe
Yeah.
Eileen's was true.
Yeah.
The state's theory that she's
Ditto.
faking and feigning
I
that
think-
whole thing as part of
yeah.
some big calculated plan,
Yeah.
despite a diagnosis with post-traumatic stress disorder with aspects of derealization and depersonalization that our expert will tell you about. That'll be for you to decide.
Well, we have our very own
But before we
expert.
go over her post-trauma
you very
behavior
much.
statements, I just want to tell you a little bit about
How that
our experts and how the brain
stands
functions. That's
up.
going to be a huge part of this.
Yeah,
post-trauma
AJ, after
impacts
this is
human
over, I'll
brain,
tell you.
Right? We're going
Am
to
I
have
allowed to
two
use my?
one of which is Manuel
Well, I
Dr.
can't
James
unlearn what I know. Like, what the hell?
You can apply what you've learned in your life, because one of the main things they talk about being a juror and jury instructions is your common sense things that you've learned and the presentation of evidence. It'd be like saying, if you weren't allowed to take things that you had learned in your life, right, like education wise, then by logic you wouldn't be able to read any of
Exactly,
the
Lamar.
exhibits because
Exactly, Lamar.
Oh, there you go, Lamar. Yeah.
So I'm able to actually apply my knowledge in the way that I interpret the evidence.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha. Check.
Check.
Well, that's good.
Dr. Hopper got his PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Massachusetts in Boston. I just want to tell you a little bit about
Very
who
good.
Dr. Hopper is and what he knows. He's a national expert. He was a fellow at the Trauma Center in Boston University. He was a fellow at the Behavioral Research Laboratory at the McLean Hospital and Harvard Medical School. Since 2006, he's had different roles at the Harvard Medical School as an instructor, a clinical instructor, a part-time instructor, and a teaching associate.
Pause, please.
Nationally, he's gone across the country.
Now, here's what I want you jurors to consider while they're reading through all of these credentials of this person who is evaluating her. So this national expert is going to sit down with her and do his thing and do his evaluation. And then he's going to apply all of the theories that he knows into this case. And notice that his entire career has been in academia. He's a professor, he's an instructor. So in terms of how he is viewing this case versus how like a clinical psychologist who's primarily seeing patients and evaluates them, and with that additional experience of seeing PTSD manifest in multiple ways, not just the academic way, like I would wonder. So I'm curious to see, because obviously they're going to have him testify, and they're
Yes.
going to have him testify to some test results. So it'll be interesting to see how our findings will be, or conclusions, I should say. Yeah. So
To see if they line up.
I'm very, very interested. Yes, I'm very interested to see how that's going to look, because I'm definitely like, I'm a evaluator, so
Mhm.
I know how to think that way, but I'm also boots on the ground, and I know that it's not always going to look a certain way. So, yeah.
I always find it interesting to hear the way that doctors, psychiatrists, and psychologists evaluate patients, where
Yes.
it can be
It's
the same person and yet they'll come out with two different evaluations. And it's always interesting to me because, you know, well, you know how I feel about it. I do, but
Well,
I
here's the thing with in court. Sorry to interrupt you, because I feel like this is where you're going, because we're like in the same head all the time.
always, yeah,
So yeah, but with the courts, like that's the part of psychology, like, because it is born out of philosophy, and that's where the line is with mental health when it comes to courts. It's, yeah, that's why insanity in the courtroom means like something very specific,
yes.
whereas in the clinical world, insanity can mean something completely, well, actually that term doesn't even exist in the clinical world. But anyways,
It's always
like what we
interesting to me.
would consider someone function, like I would evaluate, what was the guy's name, the Waffle House guy, Ryan King or whatever.
Reinke.
Yeah, like I would evaluate him as being someone who would need like living assistance. Like I would not be comfortable with him like living solo with the delusions that he's had, especially like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be like as far as it would go with me, like that there's that recognition that he has the mental illness that is preventing him from living a life without the help of others, like, you know.
Independently, right.
Right, but in court, it's completely different. And if I was to evaluate him for the purpose of court and for the purpose of insanity, I would find him still suffering from some sort of psychotic disorder, but he was still capable of determining wrong from right.
Mm-hmm.
So in the legal definition, he's not insane, and he will be able to actually function better in a prison than he would in a community or in a hospital. So
It's interesting.
yeah, but anyways,
It's always interesting
soapbox
how
over.
yeah. It's always interesting to know that when you understand the difference between the clinical side of evaluations versus the legal side, because the legal
Yes.
definitions are not always the same. And it's, you know, like it's like when Shmita and I were talking about whether or not a crime of passion occurred, and
Yeah.
what they use to determine what constitutes legally a crime of passion. All those things are interesting to me because, you know, if you think about it, yeah, I mean, passion doesn't always mean a good thing. You know, you can passionately hate somebody just as much as you
Yes.
can passionately love someone.
Well,
So it's
exactly.
specific guidelines for what constitutes a crime of passion versus just straight premeditated murder. And a lot of people don't understand. They think premeditated means like a plot, like like you were plotting
Yeah.
for some extended period of time, but it
It's a
doesn't.
split second.
Exactly. The minute you pick up a weapon, any type of weapon, a hammer, an actual weapon, you know what I'm saying? Then
Mhm.
you know, you make a decision.
Yes.
So
Yes, exactly. And that's the philosophical aspect of it. Like at what point, like how do we legally define passion? And that's where, you know, we do go to philosophy, because we can't quite find the vocabulary for like all of our human experiences. So we have to be creative, and passion is really like when I teach people about anger, for example, or in anger management, like a healthy expression of anger is passion, art. Like that's the other side of the coin of anger. And so anger can always either kill you, it can be destructive, or it can be incredibly creative. A lot of like the biggest movements of our time, like a lot of everything that was like inspired, like the civil rights, voting, everything comes out of a place of anger and a place of passion that's turned productive.
Constructive instead of destructive.
Yes, and so
Yeah.
that's the fine line. So again, we can call it a crime of passion. Yes, but you know that's just one way of saying rage killing. That's
Right.
just one, you know, and it just comes back to that anger and being able to say, okay, so you got angry and you snapped, and so that's in the eyes of the law. You're like, that's too unpredictable for us to be able to rehabilitate you on the streets, so we'll just lock you up for life.
Right. And not rehabilitate you at all.
And just have you have your outbursts in prison if you can.
Right.
So
With other people who are having outbursts in prison as well.
exactly. Lamar.
All right, here we go. Hold on, Alice is causing a kerfuffle. I gotta be right back.
He's done trainings for Special Victims Unit investigations for the United States military. He's done trainings to the neurobiology of sexual assaults for the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, which is supported by the Department of Justice. He's even here in Wisconsin in 2018. He did a training on sexual assault, brain experience, behavior, and memory for the Racine County Sexual Assault Response Team, including investigators and prosecutors. Dr.
Okay,
Hopper
so
will
he's
tell
a
you
good
about the
teacher.
brain, how it functions. And it functions in two relations he wants to talk to you about, both in the results, I think, and in the memory. So that is how we respond, how our brain responds to trauma, and how our memory is affected by trauma. He'll talk to you about parts of the brain that I don't want to go into right now because I don't know it as much as he does, but he'll tell you about the prefrontal cortex where we make decisions and it's our rational place where we think. He'll tell you about the amygdala, the point, but I don't know where it is. The fear circuitry of our brain, which when under attack, takes over and incapacitates the
Perfect.
prefrontal
We're gonna
cortex
get some
of the brain.
psychoeducation.
He'll tell you
I
about the
love it.
hippocampus and how that impacts memory as well as response. I want to make sure that I get this right, so I want to read some of the things that he'll say. He'll tell you people react to assaults in a baffling way, sometimes even the total opposite of what we'd expect. A traumatic event can rapidly and massively alter brain function by impairing rational brain regions, leaving us only reflexes and habits, the amygdala, the fear circuitry. And the trauma also affects what we remember. After a traumatic event, the survivor's memories can sound confused or unbelievable. And the memory survivors do have can be fragmentary. Some can be in great details, others not at all. Others jumbled and confused. He'll talk to you about the effects of stress on memory formation are time dependent. So when under attack, after suffering a trauma, your attention goes to certain details, but the peripheral details go away. And one of those details that goes away is time sequencing. The chronology of events is often hard to keep track of when your brain is under attack. Lastly, Dr. Hopper will testify that based on his view of the case materials, and in particular his review of some of the statements that Ezra has made, the statements that Ezra made to Detective Proc on March 23rd and March 24th, that her statements are consistent with those principles of the brain being under attack and the concepts regarding trauma and memory. He'll tell you this is a classic example of trauma memory processing over time. You'll also hear from Dr. Steve Benson, a local psychologist. He's from Wausau. He's on the Wisconsin Forensic Unit. He'll tell you about how that's he's on the group of people that when the judges need to appoint experts for certain things in forensic psychology, he is on that short list. And he's seen Ezra at least 3 clinical interviews and a 4th time that he's met with her. As part of the clinical interviews, he's also gave Ezra multiple psychological tests, including tests to check if she is feigning or malingering. His professional opinion is that she is neither feigning nor malingering. Dr. Benson's clinical diagnosis of Ezra includes PTSD with depersonalization and derealization. Those are parts of a dissociative disorder in which somebody is confused, shocked, or as in this part, doesn't even know their own name. They're not orientated to time, place, or situation. So again, just to get us back, his clinical diagnosis is PTSD with
Amen, Vincent Sear.
depersonalization and derealization. He'll tell you how his opinion is supported by other aspects
Okay,
of
Dr.
reliability,
B.
including inter-evaluator reliability, as well as multiple testing dates over long periods of time that demonstrate reliability over time. His testimony will include his opinion that Ezra's presentation was indicative of PTSD due to exposure to threatened death, serious injury, and sexual assault on March 22nd, 2018. So keeping both Dr. Hopper from Harvard and Dr. Benson, our local psychologist, keeping those responses in mind, let's talk a little bit about the post-traumatic event behavior. First, she shows up at our farmers, right? And at our farmers, Ezra doesn't know her name or what happened or really where she was or anything. But then she says, attacked.
Now, y'all
Despite
know we're
Ezra saying
going
she
to
was
cover the
attacked,
Vallow
one of the
trial
first
for
things you'll learn
sure,
about is
and
that
the Daybell
police
trial. Should they
immediately
be
start asking
separated?
about whether she was in a car accident or that she was on any drugs. And I don't say that to blame the police. I say that the police saw something that was unexplainable to them, and they went to things that they knew about, car accidents and drugs. You'll see that there was a blood test that they took from her during the same exam. She comes back clean. No positives on drugs or alcohol. They're also part of the confusion is when they ask who did this, she says they. She uses the pronoun they, to which the police ask were there more than one person, and it's confusing what, if anything, she says to that. She doesn't respond. But she definitely uses the pronoun they, which I submit to you that in normal conversation, probably most all of us would think that that means multiple people. But that's the pronoun that Ezra used when talking about Alex. It's the same pronoun she used when talking about Alex when she met with Detective Croc on March 1st and mentioned Alex and used the pronoun they. But nevertheless, it caused confusion in the investigation. They find an iPod on Ezra's person, and they're trying to figure out who she is. And they find the iPod user's name is some old college roommate who she bought the iPod from, but it's not her. Her name was Angela Murphy. She's not Angela Murphy. And then she finally says, I'm Monica. I'm Monica Carly. She regresses back to her childhood and gives them her original, essentially, birth name, which causes more confusion, right? Nothing at this point is making sense to anybody. And the police, the ambulance, they're all trying to figure out that. But the facts that you'll hear are, she's crying. She's hyperventilating. She's vomiting. She's in distress. She's upset. Post-traumatic stress disorder. She then goes to the hospital. She has a SANE exam, sees some doctors, makes statements there where she's still being asked questions. And she's getting a lot of, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. The next day on March 23rd, the police come to see her. She's in the hospital. She's in the 3rd floor in the mental health department at the hospital. They come to talk to her. She didn't want to talk. She wasn't ready to talk. This was overwhelming. She didn't know she didn't need to talk. Nobody told her she could wait. She agreed to speak with the police, but she wasn't ready. Because of the trauma, because she wasn't ready. She didn't tell them everything. She didn't tell them what she knew. She handled it the only way she knew how in that moment. She told them she didn't remember. The next day, the police, they found the car. They found Alex. They go back and they speak with Ezra. They don't immediately tell her of their findings. They have an open conversation with her. She still didn't want to talk. She still wasn't ready. She was still overwhelmed. She agreed to speak with them again, even though she wasn't ready. Because of the trauma, because she wasn't ready. She didn't tell them everything she remembered. She held back. It didn't feel safe to her. Then they told her they found the car. And then she tells them. You'll hear it comes pouring out, and she can tell it. Tells them what happened. This case is not about a boy being scratched in the arm. We understand everybody wants to know why she did that. We get that. But we may never know. It may be beyond our understanding. Those of us who haven't had that life-threatening situation come upon us may never be able to understand why. The experts will tell you post-traumatic stress disorder is a response to an unusual or abnormal situation. It's a response. It's not normal, it's not abnormal, it's a response to an abnormal situation. We can all agree that in everyday life, scratching any word in your forearm, that's abnormal. That's not everyday life. The experts will tell you that everyone's response to trauma is unique. Unique to them, unique to Ezra. In the mental health world, this behavior isn't classified as normal or abnormal. It's just a response to severe trauma. So listen to the evidence, but consider again the diagnosis and the trauma that she was under, right? Now the trauma changes everything. Scratching boy in her arm doesn't mean she's calculating, doesn't mean it's part of a plan. It's actually proof of trauma. It corroborates that there was a life threat to her. Now the state's also going to want to tell you, well, this case is about her lying about scratching that in her arm. They've already told you that in their opening. We submit to you that the evidence will show that the fact that she lied about that unexplainable behavior and then corrected her mistake isn't proof of guilt. It's proof she's human. It's proof she was afraid to talk about this traumatic event, right? She'll tell you she knew she couldn't explain the unexplainable. She still doesn't even really know why. She was afraid he wouldn't understand. She was afraid they would judge her based upon her abnormal behavior. Sure enough, they are. They're trying to discredit her based upon her unique response to trauma. Before I end, I want to talk to you about 3 particular pieces of evidence or sections of evidence that I think are going to be important for you that corroborate the trauma that she suffered in the back of that car. One of the first things is the order of events. One of the first things is his movement. Ezra says that there's a fight in the back of the car and that he's up on his feet, moving around, and then he's down on the ground when she leaves. I suspect the state's going to contest that because when the police find him, he's not down on the ground. He's back in the car. And that's something you should consider in deciding about this number that they're going to talk to you about, 16, 16, 16, 16. Remember what she says about what happened in the back seat. He didn't stop. He didn't stop, and even when she stabbed him that many times, as you can see from these pictures, use your common sense. The evidence I submit to you supports he's on his feet. Gravity is affecting the blood in a downward way, showing that he's standing after he's stabbed. That's something to think about in deciding that this happened in the back seat. He was still up and moving, and she used the amount of force that she thought was possible, that was necessary for a man who was still fighting her. He's on his feet. Second part, her clothes. You're going to see lots of pictures of her clothes. She's got 4 items of clothing on. Outside item is a flannel shirt, big jacket. You'll see 3 pieces of evidence to show that that's the outside piece of evidence. I suspect the state's going to show you 1, pictures from her at Racy's that day, that you'll be able to see she's got this flannel on the outside. 2, video from the police that saw her at 10 minutes to 1 on that same day that she's sitting in the car, she's got the flannel on the outside. 3, our farmer, Don Sipple, says that she had on a flannel. And that's important because one of the state's witnesses you're going to hear from, who took these pictures and was told by the prosecutors how to analyze the evidence, they've got the shirts all mixed up. Her outside layer is the flannel. The next layer is that sweater. You'll hear that sweater is never tested for blood. No testing for blood. We'll ask witnesses whether they observed any blood, and I submit to you the reason it wasn't tested is because nobody saw any blood on it. There's not blood on her sweater. There's blood on this shirt. Right? That's the shirt underneath the sweater. So one of the things that the state's order of event is basically their theory, as they stood up here and said, is she stabs him, and then she cuts up her own clothes, and then she runs off. We submit to you that couldn't have happened. If that shirt isn't cut, if that shirt is together during the knife fight, where's the blood? Where's the blood on it? Which then afterwards, her hands, as they said, which would be dripping in blood, grab the shirt to go and cut it herself. Where's the blood? That shirt was cut before anybody took a knife to anybody. Alex had the knife. He cut that for you. You see the next shirt, which we talked about, and it has blood on it. How did the blood get past the uncut sweater to the next layer if it wasn't already cut? That's a question that you should be asking. Unfortunately, you'll never know whose blood that is, because despite all the other things that they're going to bring for you here to test, they never tested that. The reasonable hypothesis is that's his blood. And how does his blood get past that sweater unless he'd already cut the sweater open? Sequence of an event, pay attention to the clothing. Lastly, today, this afternoon, you're going to hear from Dr. Mills. She's going to tell you about the stab wounds. She's also going to talk about this injury, an injury to his knee. An injury it's an abrasion in which his skin has been raised. There's cuts, nicks, and bruises all over his knee. Remember his pants. They're out at the at the driveway in mud. Everybody says Ezra's covered in mud. Whether there's mud or not mud on his pants is something that you'll need to decide whether it's on his knee. How would that abrasion occur other than upon a hard, dry surface? That's a question you should be asking. Because we submit to you that abrasion occurred in the backseat of the car, in the well of the car. He is on top of her. His left knee is in the well of the car. There is a fight. She's struggling for her life. He is resisting back, and his knee is on the ground, stopping her from getting out. That happens in the backseat of the car. That happens because there's a fight. That happens because he attacked her. He cut her. He strangled her. So let me just take it back to the beginning. Ezra's stumbling up to our farmer's house. She rings the bell. Our farmer comes there. He answers the door. He invites her in. Perhaps we would think of it as a duty. Not a duty in a legal sense, a legal obligation that one has, but perhaps a moral duty. A moral duty to help those in need. Our farmer accepted that duty. He brought her in, found her a seat, gave her a blanket. He didn't understand what was going on. He didn't need to. He saw she needed help. He gave it. He didn't judge her upon her character. He gave her the benefit of the doubt as one human being to another, and he gave her help. She just finished a fight for her life. Now, 18, 19 months later, here we are in this place, in this courtroom, on your doorstep. And in the end, we will be back up here asking you to do your duty, because the state will not prove that she is not acting in self-defense. They will not prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. And they will not do that. Because that's what happened. That's the evidence. They won't bring you any other evidence because it does not exist. They'll ask you to do your duty, to follow the law, and return a verdict of not guilty. Her disturbed and obsessive ex-boyfriend attacked her, cut her, strangled her. She wanted to live. She fought to survive. She's here fighting again to survive. Vote not guilty.
Phew. He sure had a lot to say.
He sure did. Well, what I will say is that I did find it compelling, the argument about the order of the clothing, because that would be
I
important.
did too.
That's a compelling argument, and that would be, I mean, obviously that would be important. So that's, very, very interesting. And I'm never a fan, and I always think it's a risk when you attempt to put the victim on trial. There are times when it is necessary, because what truly did happen was a fight for somebody's life, and it was self-defense. But it's a fine line, and you have to be very careful because it incenses jurors when you do that.
Right.
So it's,
But I think that's the only defense she had.
well, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, they get into it, so we're going to hear a lot. And we're going to see a lot. So if anybody, I guess just protect yourself first.
Yeah, for sure. This is a trial. This is a murder trial. And this is, I know a little, like I said, I know a little bit about the case, not a lot. And I just listened with you guys to the opening statements. But the truth is it sounds very, very violent, whatever happened, whichever, whether it is just she absolutely did it 100% and there was no fight between the two of them, or there was. It was incredibly violent. And so it's going to be crazy. And I'm sure there's going to be disturbing images. So you guys, I will put in the description at when I schedule the stream for what testimony is going to be given. And so, obviously, if you don't want to see the most graphic pictures, I would definitely avoid the day the medical examiner speaks. That's for sure.
She's on tomorrow.
Yeah, so tomorrow then.
His mom and grandmother are really short, and then the medical examiner's next.
Okay. So this seems like it's going to be an interesting case. I will say that if I had to pick between who gave the better opening statement, I realized that the defense's was long, but I actually think the defense did a better job.
I agree.
In the sense that he did a really good job laying the foundation for what kind of person Ezra is and what kind of person he believes or wants to show Alex. No, is it Andrew? Alex yeah. As. So, yeah.
I didn't realize she had legally changed her name.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know she was a Monica before.
Mm-hmm,
I watched this a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't remember all the things.
Yeah, she changed her name. She
looks more like a Ezra than a Monica. What I mean?
Yeah.
To me, anyway.
I remember.
Well, is that her real last name? Her birth last name?
No.
Oh, she changed that too?
She changed both. I forget the story. I think that, so her mom was really young, like 14 when she had her. And her name was Monica something. Obviously, she had a middle and a last name. And I feel like when her mother married her stepfather, he gave her his last name. But then when she changed her name to Ezra, she changed it all.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she did want a non-binary name.
Yeah. So just on a side note, I've always found the story of Vincent van Gogh and his ear just fascinating. A lot of people think it's gross and whatever, but I mean, the fact is he was so in love with this nurse, right? And she just didn't she just didn't want to have anything to do with him. And he wanted to show her, I love you so much, which, I mean, I'm not saying it's like the most rational gift to give somebody. It would be a little alarming to receive that, but he wanted to show her how much he loved her, and he was willing to, sacrifice an ear to give her, to show her. Although, if you think about it, being that he was an artist, if he really wanted to show her how much he loved her, maybe a hand would have been better, his painting hand.
Oh, gosh.
Well, I'm just saying,
Well, right. But I thought it had to do with him being deaf.
No, he was in love with a nurse.
Well, which artist was deaf?
Beethoven?
Oh.
Or Mozart?
I thought it was a painting artist.
Well, I don't know that you need hearing to be able to paint.
Well, right.
I mean, okay, yes, Max, he was not sober when he did it. But at the end of the day, it was like, no, please don't take that as me giving you asking for. I'm not giving you tips to woo, and you're intended. Number one. Number two, I'm not giving you tips on stuff to send me. No, thank you. An ear is not necessary. Cherry sours from Bucky's will do just fine. Thank you very much. Also, I can be bought with Twizzlers and original flavor Skittles. But
Oh,
that's
you know.
it.
Oh well, Molson's not here. I wanted you to tell him that I sent you the cherries because y'all were talking about it. That's where I got the
Oh,
idea.
yeah. Molson, whenever you catch, I think he's here, but I think he might be behind. Whenever you catch up.
The
Well,
original ones from the
yeah,
original store.
from the one in Austin, or well, not quite Austin, but yes, I was. Yeah. No, thank you, Rita. I'm glad. Well, my cat doesn't bring mice because we don't have them, but she used to at the other house. Not as much here, but I swear, Max.
She would bring you a squirrel if she could catch one.
She would, but she used to bring me lizards. That was her thing. She just,
Oh my
you
God, when
know.
I was there and she ran up the side of the fence.
Oh
I
yeah, and
was
snatched that
like,
lizard off. That was
yeah.
hilarious. Yes. Oh, she's a mess.
It was like the Matrix.
She's crazy. She's gotten really close to getting, I mean, she did get one a little bit. Lonnie was telling me the other day, and she's just kind of smacked it around and then wasn't sure what to do from that point. So after she like smacked it around, she just was like, she walked off. She
And Mac
doesn't,
doesn't care about him.
oh, he tries, but Mac, bless his little heart, by the time he realizes what's going on, it's too late.
Oh.
Yeah. We
So
love
you
him.
got another Monty. That's sweet.
Yes. Yeah. He's a little derpy, but I love him. I mean, he's a good boy. He's back to sleeping in here now. So it's causing some issues. We have to make spaces on. Yeah. Everybody has separate blankets now because of it. It's a mess. It's a mess.
I remember I was sleeping with my knees up to my chin to not disturb Alice.
You don't want to
And
mess
finally I
with
was-
her. She's crazy.
I was finally like, Alice, my back's killing me. I gotta move you. Sweet babies.
Yeah, sweet babies. So, all right, you guys, brace yourselves. This looks like it's going to be a doozy.
It is a doozy. I think y'all are really gonna like it
Oh, I
compared
think-
to Todd.
Yeah, I think it's well. See now, I liked Todd's because
I did too, but I'm telling you, like, to compare the difference,
Oh,
I think
yeah.
people will be like, wow, why didn't they do all this for Todd?
Well, you know what I like about the way that we're doing this is that I like that we're getting a mixed bag of defense attorneys and prosecutors, because it used to be when court TV first started, they kind of showed whatever, right? But then they got bigger, and mainly after the OJ trial, right? And so they really were only showing like the trials that made the biggest, hugest headlines, you know? And they were sensational all the way through. What happened was sensational, then the entire trial was sensational. And I like getting these lower key just to see different defenses and different prosecutions. I think it's interesting. I find it to be fascinating.
I agree.
I don't know. I just love it. I love it. And I
And
love when
court,
they argue, the attorneys argue. That's my favorite.
I don't know if they started this. I don't know when they started blocking out outside of the jury stuff. I wonder if
Something had to
some
happen.
jury, yeah, I wonder if some jury saw it on, was caught watching. Because now they don't show any of that. And I think it's so interesting. I don't know if you'll show it because we're the jury, but there's a lot of it on here. And it's very.
Well, I mean, if it's part of I'm just going to play the trial the way the trial happens. I can know when they're not when they're doing something in camera, and when the jury wouldn't be hearing that, and I won't use that, to decide. But
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
not
I
gonna
labeled it all.
Yeah, I'm not going to make anybody Max, okay, here's the deal. Shmita busted in the chat this morning and was talking about it, right? And I was going to go watch it, but then I was like, no, 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 because I was working on the openings and I knew that I can't, that takes too much. I have to, watching that, I wanted to really focus because that case is very, 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 very interesting to me for many, many, many reasons. And I'm curious about it because I believe that this case may be a precedent setting case. And those are the ones I like to watch. But I wanted to be 100% focused. So I am going to watch it. I've avoided covering it.
Which one's that?
Crumley, the school shooter.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because, well, first of all, we're not to trial yet. This is all, in the early stages of it and everything. But I don't know. I feel weird about school shootings, and
Right.
I don't know. It's weird. I don't want to. I don't want to cover it because it's very. All trials should be on some level emotional, but you guys know how it is. There are some cases, there are some trials that are just lightning rods. And as much as I would like to be able to discuss it, I also realize that there are people that are incapable of discussing it, and it just ruins it. And I like the way our chat is. I like that we can talk about things. We don't all have to agree. We have different viewpoints. We come from different walks of life, all the things, right? But we can sit in here and we can watch a trial together and have a discussion about it, and it doesn't devolve into a bunch of personal insults and all that. And I like it. And I don't want I want to keep I don't I, there's listen, I'm going to tell you, I'll be the first one to tell y'all, there is no such thing as a safe place on the internet. It's the fucking internet, okay? But I just don't if I can avoid a chaotic chat where we can all come and everybody can enjoy themselves. That's what I'd like. I'd like a space where everyone can enjoy themselves.
Right. And also, we sometimes have a dark humor, and that's a trial you can't really have any.
No, you can't. Thank you, Amelia.
I mean, we can make fun of Ezra's hair, and it's hilarious. But a school shooting, there's just like nothing. It's just too much. I agree.
It's too much. And I just, it's a fascinating, this case, I'm telling you, not so much the case against him, but the case against his parents, this is going to be a precedent setting case. And I think from that aspect, I mean, I'll watch it and stuff like that, but and a little talks like this is okay. But oh, were you Max? I didn't know that. I remember when that happened, obviously, because it's local to, not completely local, obviously it's Broward County and we're way further north than that, but I remember when it happened, and it's just it's an awful, awful thing. But the parents side of it, this is a new thing, and I find it from a legal aspect fascinating. But when you go into talking about the parents, right, if we were to cover that, the other stuff is going to come in. And I just like our chat the way that it is, the way we can have some dark humor moments, and nobody, clutches their pearls and realizes that we take what's going on in the case, obviously, seriously. But every once in a while, you need a little levity,
Right.
And I'm so sorry, Max. That's awful.
Oh, yeah, that's awful, Max. I'm very sorry. See, that's what I mean. It just touches people different.
Yeah, it hits different. And, it's sad. It's an awful tragedy. But I just like our chat the way that it is. And I always enjoy coming in here, you guys. And I just want to thank you for that, because I think needed a place where I could talk about stuff like this with people that enjoyed it as well, even if we don't always agree on things. And I'm just glad we
Yeah.
have that here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like our group of people.
I do too. We have a really great group of people. We do.
It may be small, but it's growing every day, and I love everybody that comes back.
I
Means a
kind of
lot.
like it small, to be honest
Me
with
too.
you, because I don't have to do, I mean, we all sort of know each other as much as you can know anybody on the internet, period, right? But you guys are all like, I see you guys every night, and we're all discussing this, this case with the Mullis case, which was so fascinating, and the way that you guys would bring up stuff in chat about, well, what about maybe this could happen, or what about if, or did you think about it this way? And when like, where's Kenny with the cattle prod? Now, I would never have thought about a cattle prod, honestly. So I just thought, those are the kind of things that I like, and I just you guys are just a great group, and I really, really, I thank you for that, because I love talking about this stuff. If you can't tell, I find all of
I
it
love it too.
fascinating. I like the forensic part of it. I like the investigation. I like the trial part aspect of it. I love it. I love all of it. And that quote that they read from Alex's journal about, and it's from Kierkegaard, where it talks about violence. So the thing is that he was trying to say, I think, in that statement, was that violence is all around us, and it's going to happen, right? Doesn't mean we have to participate in it, and we don't condone it. But if we don't learn something from something like this, a situation like Ezra or the Chris Wattses of the world, or even the Charlie Mansons of the world, right? Then how can we make our world a better place? You got to learn, that's what I think Kierkegaard's message is not accepting violence and then being violent, but learning from the violence. Like with Charles Manson, this dude was like 5'6", rarely bathed, he stunk, and he wasn't particularly clever, witty, funny, intelligent, but he had this entire flock of women and few men, but that were just that absolutely listened to and were devoted to him and listened to everything he ever said and believed him wholeheartedly. And these were girls from like really, really good homes, like doctors and lawyers. And there were a couple of girls that had some troubled past, but by and large, these were not girls. These were like homecoming queens and stuff. These were not girls that anybody would have said in high school, yeah, she's going to be part of the Manson family and just commit these, horrible atrocities. And the way that he was able to manipulate people, and women especially, and it wasn't just about the murders. He got him to do all kinds of stuff, which I find,
Right.
as abhorrent as what he did was, and what he got them to do was, it is fascinating, and people like that should be studied. Chris Watts should be studied. Hey, Kenny, we were just talking about you, in a good way, about the cattle prod. I never would have thought about a cattle prod, but the people like that should be studied.
I
Because
agree.
they're fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I'm about to end, Kenny. I wish you would have slid in a little earlier. But thanks everybody. And I will thank you, Mo, for being up here. Thank you, Shmita. Thank you, Dr. B, if you're listening out there. I had a great time with you guys, and we will be back tomorrow night at same time. So I look forward to it. good night, everybody, and I will see y'all tomorrow. Okay,
Night.
bye. Good night.